Aye. You know, these debates on Piers Morgan's show are very entertaining, and we love to have laughs here and there. But with this particular discussion with Cenk Uygur and the son of Hamas, who is basically an Israeli spy, there was something said during this conversation which was not funny and very serious. And I think Piers Morgan should have intervened, and he did not. And we're going to get to that discussion. I just think that it is not appropriate for people to make threats. I will say that. Rather, I don't care who you are. It's not appropriate for people to make threats. And that did happen on this interview here. We're going to go ahead and dive in here. We're going to get started where Cenk Uygur comes in, and they're talking about the death of Sinwar and if that will make an impact. Let's dive in.
Palestinian is a syndrome. It's a mental illness. It's a universal phenomenon. And Cenk is the perfect example. And if he gets hungry eventually, I will not be surprised that he will eat his own children.
Okay.
So, yeah, this gentleman here on the right, he is the son of a Hamas leader. Basically, he's an Israeli spy. In the U.S., we would call this guy a sellout, an op, a fraud, all those types of things. He's been on Piers Morgan before. He's scary. He sounds scary. The guy's got serious issues. So I just want to give you that heads up as we get into this conversation. Aye.
Cenk, your response.
Okay, so you would like me to respond to a guy who just escaped from a mental asylum. Okay. If he calls me a Palestinian...
You are the one who should go to a mental asylum.
Oh, let me pause it for a second. Oh, God, this is crazy.
Okay. If he calls me a Palestinian, I am incredibly proud to bear that name. Thank you for making me an honorary Palestinian. The whole world should be honorary Palestinians for the suffering that they have gone through and the brutal slaughter of the Palestinians at the hands of the Israelis. So I don't want the audience to get confused. Mossad is an Israeli agent. He's a turncoat. He doesn't believe that the Palestinians should exist. But it's okay. I don't have to clarify it much because he just told you. He thinks that Palestinians don't exist and that they have no rights and that they are the ones encroaching on the indigenous land of the Israelis. I mean, look, I know if you're an Israeli supporter, some of you have lost your mind so much that you believe that the Muslims there that have been living there for centuries, millennium, are somehow in your way and they should just be dispensed with, and that the real true heirs of that land are the people that were brought in from Europe and other places. Look, the Jewish people have suffered greatly throughout history, and anyone who denies that is denying reality. But now it breaks my heart to see that they have become what they most despised. They escaped that kind of brutality only to do it to the Palestinians now. So if you notice, Mossad over there never answered the question. There is no standard that the Palestinians can ever meet. They even say absurd things like they don't exist, that this Palestinian state should never exist, Palestinians as an ethnicity should never exist. And then they have the temerity to say, can you believe that they theoretically don't think that Israel should have a right to exist, even though it's existed since 1948. It's one of the biggest militaries in the world, backed by the greatest military power in the history of the world. It has nuclear weapons. Your existence is rock solid. You're murdering Palestinian children.
Hang on, Cenk.
Wake up.
Let me jump in there.
Wake up.
Cenk, that doesn't
So
change
you didn't
the
jump
fact.
in as the lunatic was saying
hang
things
on.
about, go ahead.
Cenk, that doesn't change the premise of the argument that Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis, the Iranian regime, none of them accept the existence of an Israeli state. And they are all wedded.
Piers,
well, hang on. Let me finish. Let me finish my question.
Okay,
and they're all wedded to its destruction. That's the point. It's not a question of whether it does exist.
No.
It's that all those groups want to eradicate it. They're open about it.
Okay, Piers.
First of all, let me pause here for a second, because I think that Piers Morgan thinks that this is a win or own, and it's not. Why would you accept? Let me put it this way. It's like It's like asking someone that lives in a low income neighborhood that has been gentrified, and let's say they're the last couple of people there that are left and everybody else has been pushed out because they can't afford to live there anymore. Now, they came in and everything that used to be a mom and pop place, it's gone because they came in and brought in a Whole Foods, a juice bar, a spin cycle, gym, all these gentrified things, a brewery down the street. I like breweries, but you know what I'm saying? And now the local businesses couldn't keep up with it because, again, it increases the rent. So they couldn't afford to stay there anymore either. It's like asking the people that grew up in that neighborhood to just openly accept what is happening right in front of their eyes, that they are being taken over. So when Piers Morgan says that they don't accept an Israel state, first of all, did anybody come to the Palestinian people? Did anybody come to those people when it was decided that a state for Israel was going to be created there? Did anybody come to any of the people? And there were already Jewish people living there with Palestinians. Did anybody come to them and ask them, hey, we're thinking about forming this state of Israel, and how would you feel about it? We would need your signatures if you want to do it. Did anybody ask? No, they just took it. And then they pushed the Palestinians off the land that were there. So to say to those people that you should accept that there is, the Israeli state, why would they? Why would they accept that? Asking them to accept that is asking them to accept the occupation, is asking them to accept the oppression. And this isn't just about Gaza. We can look at the West Bank. Why would Palestinians in the West Bank accept an Israeli state? Why would they accept the state of Israel when it is them who are kicking them out of their homes and taking over their land? Why would they accept it? So sometimes you got to put yourself in other people's shoes. Imagine if you were growing up in Gaza. Imagine if you were growing up in the West Bank and somebody came to your house and knocked on your door and said, this is now mine and you got to go, and you've been paying rent or paying mortgage all that time. And the reason? Because you're Palestinian, they don't want you there. That's the reason. That's it. This is not your house no more. This is mine. So why would they accept it? And it's just, I don't understand that. It's like Piers Morgan. It's like you're asking people who are oppressed to accept their oppressor. The Palestinian people don't have their own state. And Netanyahu and the Likud party doesn't want them to have their own state. The Palestinian people don't have a military. And then people wonder, how do you get Hamas? How do you get Hezbollah? You get it because of the occupation and the oppression. And this is insane. And so to say, yeah, I accept this, that means you accept the occupation and you accept the oppression. It's just common sense.
Piers, let's look at your framing, okay? So in the reality-based world, Palestine does not exist because Israel is blocking its existence. Its cabinet voted to say that a Palestinian state will never exist. They will never allow it. So you're not worried that in the real world, the Palestinians are not allowed to exist, and if they resist at all, their brutal 57-year humiliating occupation, they're called terrorists. They're the worst people on earth. We should hate them all, and they should never be allowed to exist. That's the real world. Israel exists and is one of the largest militaries in the world.
Yeah, but you're missing my point again, deliberately. I think you're deliberately missing my point.
Hold on. Okay, Piers, let me finish. Now, meanwhile, you live in a theoretical world where you say these powerless people who have no ability to affect Israel's existence at all. The Palestinians are literally throwing stones. They bomb back to the Stone Age. They have no power at all.
Been firing
You're
rockets.
saying, hold on. If you ask me a question, let me answer the goddamn question.
Wrong statements,
okay, you're being a ridiculous.
Let me chime in here. For Piers Morgan, who pretends like he doesn't know, the rockets came after the stones. You see what I'm saying? They were throwing stones. They were throwing rocks at one point. They were peacefully protesting at one point, and the IDF were shooting at their feet. The peaceful organizing did not work. So then they were throwing stones. They were shot for throwing stones. So the rockets came after the stones. You see what I'm saying? Because what you can't do is you can't sit here and tell someone that they have to continue to allow this oppressive state to bully them, oppress them, steal their land, and fire rockets at them, by the way, but they're not allowed to defend themselves. And I say this every time when people say to me, well, Israel has a right to defend itself. Lebanon doesn't. Gaza doesn't. The West Bank doesn't. Because what they're really telling you when they say this, Israel has a right to defend itself, they never tell you that these other places have a right to defend themselves. So what they're really telling you is that Israel has the right to bully all the areas around them. That's what they're really telling you.
Ridiculous, unfair, ridiculous.
No, I'm picking you
go
up
and join the Mossad over here with him.
I'm picking you up. His name is Mossad, by the way, with a B. But the
Mossad, right? That's who he works for, and that's who he's
his name is Mossad, and he works.
Oh, he's Mossad that works for Mossad. Okay, got it.
And the reason we haven't got him on screen at the moment, we've got a technical problem with him, which we're trying to fix. So you and I will keep talking. No, I think that you're deliberately. I think you're deliberately avoiding the point I'm making. Which is
no, I'm getting to the point you're making. If you stop cutting me off.
Okay, but you're making misleading statements. You're saying these people are throwing rocks at Israel. They're doing a lot more than throwing rocks. Hezbollah's been firing rocket after rocket after rocket. Hamas has been launching terror attacks. The Houthis have been firing rockets. The Iranians are funding it all. It's not just rock throwing, Cenk, is it?
Okay, Piers, you're making it sound. This is the frame of all Western media, that the Palestinians and the Arabs and the Muslims are so strong, they're about to wipe out poor little Israel, who's barely existing right now, poor little David, and this Goliath Arabs are about to wipe them out. Are you crazy?
I said they would like to.
Israel is the... Okay, what an absurd thing. Okay, so here, Piers. African National Congress resisted the apartheid in South Africa. They did it through terrorism, they killed civilians, and they did it through peace, they did it through both. They were both terrorists and resistance fighters. They were both of those things. And you can be both of those things. What you would say right now is the African National Congress didn't want white South Africa to exist. Yep. They wanted them to be wiped out. The African National Congress are terrorists. They're the worst people. We have to keep apartheid because those guys are terrorists. We have to keep apartheid because they don't want South Africa to exist as it currently is. So no, that's absurd.
Yeah, that is absurd. I agree with Cenk on this here because this is where people lose the argument when it comes to Israel being an apartheid state. The same people that called out apartheid South Africa, the moment you mention Israel, it's like all of a sudden they don't want to say that Israel has apartheid when it really does. And there have been human rights groups or organizations that have explained that the apartheid in Israel is extremely brutal, right? So Ta-Nehisi Coates, that was, going on like his book tour, which is about his experience in Israel. One of the things that he was talking about was how brutal the apartheid is in Israel, and how himself as an American, he has more rights than people who were born there, Palestinians who were born there and grew up there, which is crazy when you think about it. So there is also a difference between rhetoric and action. It's interesting to me that Piers Morgan has more vitriol for the Palestinians, and he's referring to the previous Hamas charter where they said Israel should not exist. And he seems to have more vitriol towards that than he does towards Israel, which is actively trying to remove the Palestinian people. So when you look at people's actions, you can see that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza. They want them gone. They want people in Lebanon gone. They're the ones actually killing, all the people. But he is more upset with a previous Hamas charter that has the rhetoric, instead of being upset with the state of Israel, who is actively killing and removing the people. So that lets you know right there whose pocket Piers Morgan is in.
So if you say to me, should Israel exist? Of course Israel should exist. Of course they should be a safe haven. But they're saying, no, Cenk, you're right, Israel should exist, but Palestine shouldn't. And you're saying I'm the one that's being unfair?
I haven't said that. Why are you
Do not
putting words
see
in
the
my mouth?
absurdity of that?
Why are you putting words in my
Okay,
mouth?
do
I
you
never
see-
said that.
Okay, Piers, do you see the absurdity?
I didn't say
of
that,
the
Cenk.
Israelis not only existing, but occupying the Palestinians for 57 years and preventing their state, and then claiming that their right to existence is somehow in jeopardy, but the Palestinians isn't. So for God's sake, what can the Palestinians do for these Israelis to free them, to give them their state, and to
Well,
stop
let me bring.
occupying
We've got
them?
Moscow.
So let me pause here for a second. And this is why I don't believe that states should be religious states or countries should be religious countries. And what do I mean by that? I believe in separation of church and state. And you're free to practice whatever religion you want to. If you want to practice no religion, that's totally fine. That's what I believe. This is where Professor Morandi and I, we do differ on this. We were talking about Iran last time he was on, because I told Professor Morandi, I don't believe that religion should be the law of the land. And I don't. Because this is what you end up running into. Because just think about it. A lot of these actions that Israel does, they can say, well, this is the only Jewish state. This is like, our faith and this is our safe place or whatever, and that kind of thing. But look at what it turned into. Zionism is racist. It's a racist ideology. So it went from, we want this to be a place for people who practice Judaism, to we want this to be a place for just those of us who are ethnically Jewish, and the Palestinians have to go. And this is why I don't believe it. I think that people should be able to practice whatever religion they want to practice. I do not think that religion should be the law of the land. And I think if that were removed, Israel could be a different place. It really could be. I mean, imagine if those of us live right here in the United States, imagine if Christianity were the law of the land. Right. And then some people were saying, well, in some ways we kind of do have, no, we kind of don't. Because imagine if the laws of the land were the 10 Commandments. What if that was part of the law of the land? And which testament will we go by? The New Testament or the Old Testament? And what will we use? So think about that for a second. And that's why. And I know, some people are deeply religious, and that's your right. I just don't think that religion should be the law of the land. It causes too many problems.
Israelis, I'm begging you to stop being so brutal, stop being the thing that you hated. Stop being the thing that oppressed you in the first place. These Palestinians are not Nazis. You're fighting a ghost. No, the people who are being the fascists here, I hate to do this because it's breaking my heart and it should break your heart. You're being the fascists. You're the ones slaughtering their civilians. Look, how do you look at those children being starved to death in northern Gaza and not see Jewish children in Germany in the 1930s and 40s? How do you not see that?
They don't see it because they have been propagandized to believe that they're all terrorists. That's why they don't feel anything. It's sad I have to say it, but it's true. This is why they don't feel anything. And you got to think about what happened, particularly in this country after September 11. There was a lot of Islamophobia in this country. And they don't see them as equal. And now Piers would never say that. You see what I mean? Some of them will never say those words that I just said to you, but they'll show you with their actions. And then some of the members of the Likud party have publicly stated they've called them animals. They've called them garbage, subhuman, we got to get rid of these people, are very, very vocal about it. But you won't hear Piers Morgan call that out because they don't see them as equal. And Piers will probably never say, listen, I've never been on Piers Morgan's show, but if I were on Piers Morgan's show, I would tell him, I don't think you see them as equal. I don't think you see the Palestinians as equal as the Israelis. I think you see them as less than. I would tell him that to his face. I have no problem saying that. Because how else can you explain it?
It's the same exact image. Snap out of it.
Oh, but Cenk,
Stop being the thing that you hated.
All right, Cenk, before I go to Mossad for a response, how do you not see, conversely, that what happened on October the 7th was to Jewish people not dissimilar to what the Nazis did to them in World War II. How do you not see that parallel?
No, it is not similar at all.
It is.
At all, Piers.
It is.
No,
it's a group
Piers,
wedded to the destruction of all
it's
Jewish...
insanity.
Let me finish
Stop
my
saying
question.
the same things.
It is a group wedded, in the case of the Nazis, to the eradication of all Jewish people, as indeed are Hamas. What's the difference?
Okay, this is a convenient talking point to justify...
What's the difference?
Actually preventing the Palestinians from
Tell
existing.
me the moral difference.
What is wrong with you people?
Tell me the moral difference.
Reality,
I'll tell you what's wrong with them. Again, they don't see them as equal. Because imagine if I'm sitting here and let's not go back to slavery. Let's just go back to Jim Crow. Let's not go as far back. If I'm sitting here and I'm having a conversation with you and I'm talking about the laws of Jim Crow, right? And I say to you, imagine having to sit at the back of the bus. Imagine having separate facilities for every other thing or separate sections in those facilities. And imagine that as a Black person, like your schools are crappy. You don't get a school bus. You got to walk to school, whether it's a mile or 2 miles. Your books are falling apart. Imagine going to sleep at night and being afraid that there may be a cross that's burning in your yard. Imagine living under the laws of Jim Crow. And you come back to me and you say, but what about all those white people? Or you come back to me and you bring up a situation of a white woman who said that a Black guy whistled at her. These things are not the same. When there is one group that is in power and the other group is being oppressed, you cannot try to get the same type of empathy for the oppressor that I am asking you to have for the oppressed, because the people who are oppressed are not in power. And if you can't turn your camera to the oppressor, the people who are in power, and you can't critique them in any kind of way, and you got to show, then that means I got to look at the money. And when I follow the money trail with Piers Morgan, which I've mentioned on this show before, his connections to his former boss, Rupert Murdoch, who donated to Benjamin Netanyahu. So when you put all these pieces together, then you understand why he has some of the views that he has. Piers Morgan isn't dumb. And whether he's conservative or not, I know conservatives that have looked at this situation and even they will tell you Israel's wrong. But the money trail for Piers Morgan won't allow him to tell you it's wrong. That's why Loki called him out.
So, yes, of course I'll tell you the difference. So what they did on October 7th was terrible. I hate any civilians being killed. I hate terrorism. That is why Netanyahu is an awful, disgusting terrorist. He's killed 30 to 40 times the number of civilians that Sinwar did. What an awful, despicable terrorist he is. So now guys, October 7th can be terrible, but at the same time, you can acknowledge the power dynamic of who is stronger and who is not. Why does that make a difference? Because the Nazis were the more powerful force. They had every ability to wipe out the Jews, and they tried. The powerful force, Goliath, the Nazis were horrible for what they did to the Jews. When the French resistance fought back and killed German civilians, it might have been the wrong strategy. It might have been immoral to kill German civilians. But the French resistance was not, oh, they're trying to wipe out Germans from existence, so the French resistance is bad. They should surrender to the Nazis. No, they were the powerless. The powerless always do ineffective violence that we call terrorism. And then
Okay. And then let's go back to, let me finish, and then we're going to go to the second part of this.
Just say, no, it's their fault that the powerless are going to somehow wipe out the powerful. No, you're framing it in a way that is totally hypothetical and theoretical because you want to avoid the reality of what is actually happening in the world, which is the Israelis wiping out the Palestinians, slaughtering them, tens of thousands.
All right, let me bring in Mossad.
Okay. Now let's go to part 2, because this is where Mossad, who is a Mossad agent, loses his shit. And this is wild. I can't believe he even said this on here. But let's get into this part.
Benjamin Netanyahu's fight. This is the fight of the Jewish people. It's a fight of a nation. that is in the face of an existential threat. And this is where I identify with the Jewish people, by the way. It's not the fact that I helped stop suicide bombers during the second Palestinian Intifada, and Cenk want me to feel guilty for...
You identify with who paid you. You sold out your own people. This guy sold out his own people, turned on his own people for money.
For saving human lives. And he tried to shame me for some reason. Thank God I know who I am. And I am very proud of what I did, because there is no way to go wrong with saving human lives. And today, when we look at the situation in Gaza, it's very similar. If I go to Gaza, the people of Gaza will kill me. If I go to the West Bank, the people of the West Bank would kill me. But why?
Because you're a spy. Because you were one of them and you sold them out. Because, and let's be real, you would kill them too. Let's be real.
You need to ask them that question. Because I stopped suicide bombing attacks against civilians that killed people indiscriminately. This is my crime. And Cenk agrees with them. And many of the pro-Palestine around the world agree with them. And what we say, this is not the fight of a politician in Gaza. This is the fight of a nation. I am fighting for my very existence. And this is where I identify with the Jewish fight. Now you ask me what's going to be next. And I don't like to do spoilers. But the entire Iranian regime is going to be history, sooner or later. And of course, your guests keep on trying to discredit me. They don't know that I'm coming from that hill, from the depth of it, to a degree that I can foresee the future. You can just go back to our first interview from the beginning of the war and what I told you. And what I...
So I can foresee the future. He can foresee the future, guys. Is he psychic now?
I have been telling you, and what I tell you now. The Iranian regime, that includes Ayatollah and the Iranian guard, they are all targets. The next level is going to be massive assassinations in Tehran. Everybody who helped the attacks on October 7th, everybody who orchestrated the attacks against the Jewish people, everybody who helped sacrifice Arab and Jewish children, Persian children, Ayatollah, since 1979 until now, he enjoyed a free ride. But now, this is not going to continue for eternity.
So did everybody hear what he said? He said that Iran is next. He's saying that there's going to be attacks in Tehran, Iran. Tehran, by the way, is where Tehran University is located, and that's where Professor Morandi teaches. And I'm sure some of you that follow foreign policy a lot, you're familiar with Professor Morandi. He's been on a number of shows. He's been on this show a couple of times. He's been on Danny Haifong's show. So that's not like some rogue place. Like, we're talking about businesses, we're talking about universities, other schools. And he is just boldly saying this on Piers Morgan's show. No pushback from Piers, by the way.
He's wanted and he's going to be punished. The Iranian nuclear program is going to be destroyed. And anyone who gets in the way, it doesn't matter where they are, even if they are politicians in the West, they are going to fall. Because we cannot afford letting any Islamic entity, and I said this previously, and I mean what I say, and you need to take this very seriously.
Okay, so pause. Did you hear what he said when he said it doesn't even matter if they're politicians in the West, they're going to fall? Excuse me? Then he proceeds to say, you need to take this very seriously. What? Because that to me sounds like a threat. Does it sound like a threat to you? It sounds like a threat to me. And Piers sits there and doesn't say anything. Now, he's interrupted Cenk multiple times, but he says nothing when this guy sits right on his show and says politicians in the West will fall. It gets worse. Wait for it.
A person who has been launching ballistic missiles on a democracy while millions of children had to go to shelter again and again and again. Then he funded his proxies to destabilize an entire region.
The Israeli children had a shelter to go to. The kids in Gaza have no shelter to go to. The kids in Lebanon didn't have a shelter to go, an underground shelter that they can go hide in. See, this is another thing I want to mention about those who are the oppressor and those who are oppressed. The fact that in Israel, they have shelters that they can go to protect themselves. They have the Iron Dome, which is also supposed to protect them, although sometimes things get through. And then you look at Gaza, which has no protection. You look at the West Bank, which has no protection. These kids are just slaughtered. So are you seriously going to sit up here and complain that kids in Israel had to go into a shelter compared to kids in Gaza that had no shelter to go to? And I see videos of them with missing limbs and their bodies falling apart. Are we really making that comparison? The role is to make it seem like Israel is forever the victim, even though they're in power. Hey, this is insane.
This type of lunatics cannot obtain mass destruction weapon. It's as simple as that. It's common sense. You don't need to be part of the Israeli intelligence to realize that Ayatollah with a mass destruction weapon is bad news. So Cenk and many of those losers want us to stop and wait for help to come from the outside, just like the Palestinians, by the means of manipulation and deception. And when things don't go their way, they get very angry. And we tell them, you will be defeated. Cenk, you are going to be defeated. You are already defeated.
Okay. Cenk, final word to you.
Piers, did you hear what he just said? He threatened politicians in the West that if they don't agree with Israel's war against Iran, that they're going to fall.
He heard it and he didn't say anything. He sat right there while he said it.
And remember, he's an Israeli agent. Are you saying Israel will murder politicians in the West or get rid of them politically through bribery or whatever else? What do you mean the politicians in the West will fall if they don't agree to back Israel's war against Iran?
Yeah, we will not vote for them anymore.
Oh, no, well, you don't vote for them now. You're not in our country.
Let's pause here and let's interject. So he says, what do you mean? Is something going to happen to those politicians? Oh, no, we will not vote for them anymore. What do you mean you will not vote for them anymore? You don't live here. You don't vote in the United States. What exactly is Mossab trying to tell everybody, ladies and gentlemen? What is he trying to tell you? What does he mean, vote for them anymore? Let's go on.
What do you mean the politicians will fall?
We live in democracy, and we have the right to bring them up and to bring them down. Those who agree with Ayatollah, we don't want them in office. And all the sympathizers with terrorists like yourself, we don't want them even to be in our country.
Who is we, and how are you bringing down politicians in the West if they dare to defy Israel? Tell me how you're bringing them down.
I already answered you that.
Are you going to murder them, or are you going to bribe them? Or are you going to bribe someone else? Who are you going to do? And okay, so let me answer it because he's not. Look, the best case scenario, we've seen the worst case scenario. Buy an Israeli product, see how it turns out for you, okay? Now, the best case scenario for what he's saying there is, oh, no, AIPAC's going to come in and say, hey, if you work for Israel, we'll give you a lot of money, and now J Street too. If you don't work for Israel, we'll give that money to your political opponent and we'll eliminate you politically. And that is where we are here in America. And Piers, you can't deny it. I mean, right now, almost all of our politicians, their top donor is AIPAC. And so, in a sense, the United States is occupied territory.
There it is. I was waiting for that moment. There it is. So there you go, folks. Because basically what he's telling you is that AIPAC, J Street, the Israeli lobby, they control our politicians. They control the government. Now we know that we have politicians, a lot of them that take, money from the Israeli lobby. But what he just said to you lets you know that anytime they want to remove the politicians that we have, they can do so because those PACs and those lobby interest groups are that powerful. So let's ask another question, ladies and gentlemen. This is why I said we need to cut off all aid to Israel, all of it, all of it. Why are we giving money to the state of Israel for them to control the politicians? Why are we giving them money to the state of Israel for them to control the politicians? That don't make no damn sense. To me, this seems like a one-sided relationship. You know what I'm saying? And it seems like one side is getting a lot and the other side is barely getting anything except for the fact that, oh, we'll help you win your reelection. We'll put out targeted ads against you, against, your opponent. We'll help you. That's all the politicians are getting. Israel gets $3.8 billion a year from the United States when there's not a conflict. They have free health care. They have college, free college. So somebody explain this to me, because to me, I don't know about you, but I'm not a fan of one-sided relationships. And the way I kind of see this is we could end this tomorrow by simply cutting off all aid and funding to Israel. And once we cut off aid and funding to Israel, the lobby interest groups will fall with it. There goes AIPAC. There goes J Street. But the reason why our government doesn't do it is because they want the resources that are there. They want Israel to be there because they don't want the Arab countries to have control over the resources. So Israel, in its sense, is there for the United States. The United States sees Israel as a protector of the resources for the West. That is what this is about. It just feels like the U.S. government has been taken hostage. And this should have never happened. Special interest groups should have never happened. Lobbying groups should have never happened. The super PAC should have never happened. We should have continued to have free public elections. And the moment that our political system decided to allow lobby interest groups in, the level of corruption just knew no bounds. And as long as Israel is there protecting the resources for the West, the U.S. government is never going to turn their back on Israel. This is why I keep telling you, when Kamala Harris says we got to get a deal done, she don't care about no damn deal. At the end of the day, they're never going to turn on Israel because of the interest in the Middle East. I don't know. I don't know if they just think we're all just foolish and we can't Google or we're not reading. But if you follow the money, you'll see exactly what's happening here. So essentially, this guy is letting people know that he's like, listen, AIPAC owns your country. This is crazy.
And now Mossad or whoever he is saying, hey, well, you better watch out. If you defy Israel at all and you don't pay for the war we're starting with Iran, there could be consequences for you if you're a politician in the West. And that is super scary. And this is the bullies that they are. They have tremendous power while pretending to be powerless. And I want to be super clear here, guys. I'm talking about the government of Israel. We're not, and the right wing, and they literally have terrorists in their cabinet, convicted in Israel of supporting terrorism. This out of control right wing extremist government is now saying that if you defy us in any way, there's going to be consequences for you throughout the world, including the lethal consequences they've shown in the Middle East. They've now attacked 5 of their neighbors, and he just promised that they're going to do a series of assassinations all across Iran. That's called starting a war. And guess who's going to pay for it? They're going to make us, the American taxpayer, pay for the war of Israel. And if any of our politicians defy them, you just heard an Israeli agent saying that they will fall.
Well,
yeah, but Cenk Uygur, Kamala, that's going to happen under Kamala Harris or Donald. That'll happen under either one of them. But I want to let you to know, because I know Cenk supports Kamala Harris. That's going to happen under Kamala Harris too. That's scary stuff, man. Scary stuff.